The alley behind the bakery smelled like yesterday's bread and tonight's loneliness. The cold crept in through the cracks of broken concrete, seeping into Luna's bare feet as she sat curled up behind a dented dumpster. Her hoodie was torn. At the sleeves, the strings long gone. Her knees were pulled tightly to her chest, as if trying to fold herself small enough to disappear. She held a weather-worn notebook close to her ribs, its pages wrinkled, some stained with raindrops, others smudged with charcoal or blood or both. It was the only thing she owned that no one had tried to steal. Night was beginning to settle over downtown Los Angeles. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that danced in silence. Luna didn't look up when footsteps echoed near the alley. Most of the time, people passed through without noticing her. Or worse, they noticed, but only enough to tighten their grip on their bags or cross the street. But this man didn't pass through. He slowed. Then he stopped. Luna didn't raise her head. She stayed still, fingers clutched tighter around her notebook, her muscles locked, waiting for the insult, the pity, offer that came with too many conditions. But instead, a quiet voice broke through the stillness. "Hey," he said, not loud, not intrusive, more like he was talking to the cold air, letting it decide whether to carry his words to her or not. She risked a glance. A man stood there, holding out a wrapped sandwich, the kind with two halves and a little note taped. To it someone had written turkey and Swiss, no mustard, in neat handwriting. He wore jeans, a flannel shirt, and a worn beanie pulled low over his forehead. Something about him was familiar, but not in the way celebrities are familiar from screens. It was deeper than that. Something quieter. "You hungry?" asked she. Didn't speak. Didn't nod. Didn't reach out. The man crouched a few feet away and placed the sandwich gently on the ground, just close enough for her to grab if she chose to. He didn't stare. Didn't ask her name. Didn't ask what happened. He just looked at her like she was human, not broken. It's not filthy, not dangerous. Just there. His eyes lingered on her notebook. He smiled a little and said softly, "You remind me of someone." And that was it. He stood up, gave her a small nod like she'd answered somehow, and walked away. Not hurried. Just gone. Luna waited until his footsteps faded, until she was sure he wasn't watching. Then carefully she reached out and pulled the sandwich into her lap. She didn't cry. It's not because she didn't want to, but because there was something about the way he looked at her. It felt too new to cry over. Someone had seen her, not the bruises, not the dirt her. And that night, for the first time in a long while, she fell asleep not from exhaustion, but from something else she couldn't name, something close to warmth.
Oh.
Something that left her wondering not just who that man was, but why he had come back. The next day, Luna didn't expect him. People like that didn't come back. Kindness, in her experience, was a one-time event like finding a warm French fry in a trash. It's a bin or a stranger dropping $1 without looking. It wasn't something you could count on, certainly not from someone like him. So when she saw him again, 4 blocks from the bakery, standing outside a laundromat with the same calm eyes and the same quiet energy, her heart twisted in her chest like it had been caught. Mid-beat, he wasn't handing out food this time, just sitting on the curb with a small brown bag beside him, sipping coffee and staring at nothing in particular. She stopped in her tracks across the street. He looked up, met her eyes, and didn't smile, just nodded, slow and steady. "Not like I know you, but more like you're safe to stand there." Then he turned back to his coffee. She didn't cross the street, but she didn't walk away either. The next day he was there again, this time outside a closed bookstore. Same nod, same bag. This time he pulled out a small, unopened bottle of water and set it gently on the edge of the sidewalk before leaving. On the 3rd day, he waited by the overpass where most of the city's forgotten gathered at dusk. He said nothing, gave out granola bars, apples, pairs of clean socks folded in plastic bags. When he spotted Luna across the crowd, he didn't call to her. Instead, he placed a small, square object on a bench under the bridge and walked away. When the others wandered off, she crept toward it, a notebook. Brand new. No stickers, no marks. Just clean white pages and a smooth black cover. On the inside of the front flap was a single sentence written in tidy handwriting. "Your story matters." She stared at it for a long time, longer than she should have. Then she tucked it under her hoodie and vanished into the night. Days passed. She saw him again and again. He never brought attention to her, never tried to touch her, never asked where she slept. Each time, he left something behind. Once it was a pair of canvas shoes, her size. Another time, a wrapped bar of dark chocolate and a napkin that said "for the bad nights." It's always small, always quiet. But the strangest thing, he never brought a camera, never had an entourage, no security, no press. No one even seemed to recognize him. Luna began to wonder, was he really who she thought he was? And if he was, why was he doing this? People like her were used to being ignored or filmed or exploited, but this man was doing none of that. He simply returned. And that made him dangerous in a way Luna couldn't explain. Because the only thing more terrifying than being abandoned was being seen, really seen. One night, she followed him. He had just handed out the last of his supplies and was walking down an empty side street. His hands were in his coat pockets, head slightly bowed like he was lost in thought. Luna kept a good distance, her steps silent behind him. He stopped near an old mural of a child looking up at the stars. "Ah!" and just stood there for a minute, staring. Then, he said without turning around, "You don't have to follow me, Luna." Her breath froze. She hadn't told him her name. He turned around slowly. No anger, no smugness. Just that same quiet kindness in his eyes. "You wrote it once," he said, nodding toward her notebook. "I saw it. You crossed it out after." She clenched the strap of her bag. "You following me?" He shook his head. "No, just looking." For someone I used to be, she didn't understand what that meant. Not really. But for the first time in months, she didn't feel like running. Instead, she asked the one thing clawing at her chest. "What do you want from me?" He didn't answer right away. Just looked at the stars above the mural. Then he said, "Nothing." His voice cracked just a little, and that crack said everything, because maybe, just maybe, he didn't come to save her. Maybe he came because he needed saving too. The rain didn't fall gently that night. It came down like punishment, sharp, cold, merciless. Puddles swallowed the sidewalks. The gutters overflowed. The steam from the street mixed with the darkness and turned the city into something ghostly. Like the past, trying to breathe through the pavement, Luna was huddled beneath a makeshift tarp stretched between a dumpster and a rusted gate. It wasn't waterproof. Corners had already torn. Her hoodie clung to her skin like a second layer of shame. And the toes of her new canvas, shoes his gift, were soaked through. She hadn't seen him in 3 days. Not since the mural. She told herself that was good. That maybe it was better. He stopped coming around. He didn't owe her anything. No one ever did. And yet, her heart had started beating differently, as if it were counting time and absences instead of ours. She was shivering when the footsteps returned. She didn't move, didn't call out, didn't hope. Footsteps were always a gamble. Could bring safety or danger, more often the second. But then she smelled something. Cinnamon, a paper cup appeared near the opening of the tarp. "Chamomile tea," the voice said, "with honey and cinnamon. Helps with the cold." Luna didn't reach for it. The man didn't move either. "I figured you'd be here," he added. She blinked at the rain sliding down his flannel sleeves. His beanie was darker now, soaked through. And even in the dim light, she could see the water dripping from his eyelashes. "Why?" she croaked, her voice hoarse from days without use. He set the cup down and crouched, not too close, just enough that she could see his face. "Because you haven't written in the notebook yet." Luna looked away. "How would you know?" "Because you would have left pieces of it somewhere on a wall, in a puddle on someone else's heart." She wanted to laugh. Came out like a cough. Then, without ceremony, without explanation, without drama, he said it. "Come with me." She stared. At him, stunned. The rain thundered above them like it was trying to drown the moment. He didn't rush, didn't plead. Just let the words float in the air between them. "Just for one night," he added. "Someplace dry. Safe." Luna's instincts kicked in like a siren. Don't trust. Don't move. Don't hope. Why? She asked. He looked straight into her. Not past her. Not through her. Into her. Because I see something in you that the world forgot. Her hands tightened around her knees. What do you see? He didn't blink. A voice that doesn't know it's powerful yet. Her chest burned. Not from illness, not from fear, but from something more dangerous recognition. You think you can fix me? She whispered. He shook his head. No, but maybe you don't need fixing. Maybe you just need someone to stand beside you while you rebuild. The silence hung there. The rain kept falling. The teacup steamed against the wet concrete. Luna didn't answer, but she stood up slowly, carefully, her legs shaking, her eyes locked on as she left the tarp behind. Didn't look back. She followed him to the street where a quiet black car waited. Nothing flashy, nothing loud. Just to open doors and warmth inside. When they pulled away from the alley, she clutched her old notebook against her chest, like armor and memory combined. And though she still hadn't written a single word, something inside her had already begun to speak. The black car pulled up to the curb, its windows reflecting a sea of lights, velvet ropes, and camera flashes that cracked like lightning in a dry storm. Outside, the red carpet looked less like fabric and more like something ancient and ceremonial-like. A path meant only for the untouchable, the flawless, the famous. Luna sat frozen in the back seat. From behind the tinted glass, she saw them rows of press photographers, porters gripping microphones with painted smiles, fans screaming behind, barricades with signs that said, "Marry me, Keanu," and "John Wick 5 now." The engine hummed quietly. The driver hadn't said a word since pulling up. Keanu sat beside her, calm, as if he'd done this 1,000 times. Maybe he had, but tonight wasn't about him. He glanced over and saw her gripping the notebook she refused to leave behind. It rested in her lap, worn and water-stained, pages still blank. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just walk." She shook her head, her voice a whisper. "I can't." "You already did," he said. "You walked out of that alley." He opened his door and stepped out into the roar of attention. The crowd erupted, the way it always did when someone famous emerged. But tonight, there was something different. They expected cameras. They expected glamour. They didn't expect her. Luna's door opened. She didn't move right. Away, just stared at her bare feet. She had taken the shoes off before leaving the boutique. Not because they didn't fit, but because something inside her said she didn't want to step into that world pretending to be someone else. Bare feet meant truth, and even if truth was ugly and raw, at least it was hers. She stepped out slowly, blinking under the assault. Of light, the carpet burned under her skin, not from heat, but from pressure. Eyes, judgment, curiosity that felt like knives. A silence rippled through the crowd, camera snapped, but for a few breaths, no one said a word. Keanu reached for her hand. She didn't want to take it at first. Not because she didn't trust him, but because she was afraid of what it meant, of the stories people would build from it, what they'd assume. But then she saw the calm in his eyes, the steadiness. She realized this wasn't about being rescued. This was about being seen. She took his hand. They walked. Paparazzi exploded in frantic questions. "Keanu? Who is she? Is this your daughter? Is this for a role? What's the message?" Luna flinched. Woman's voice sneered. From behind the barricade, "Since when did they let barefoot girls into the Oscars?" The words sliced through her like broken glass. Keanu didn't flinch. He simply paused, turned his head toward the voice, and said with a stillness that silenced 10 rows since tonight. That moment became the photo. The freeze frame that would be plastered across headlines for the next 48 hours. Keanu Reeves, suited in quiet elegance, standing beside a barefoot teenage girl in a plain lavender dress, her shoulders trembling, but her eyes locked forward. No makeup team, no publicist, no backstory, just presence. They reached the entrance. A security guard stepped forward, unsure. "Sir, is she?" Keanu pulled a folded envelope from his pocket and handed it over. "Guest of honor," he said, "cleared weeks ago." Luna stood silently as the man opened the rope. Inside the lobby, the noise softened. Her breath returned, but her heart still raced. They passed celebrities she only knew from posters. Actors in tailored gowns and tuxedos. None of them looked like her. Some of them stared. Some pretended not to. A famous producer she recognized from a scandal scoffed loudly. "What is this bring your charity case to work day?" Luna froze. Keanu stopped, turned, and looked at the man. Not with anger, but with something deeper. Colder. "This is Luna," he said, "and the only charity tonight is your attention span." The man blinked, speechless. They kept walking. Through the gold-lined corridors, past walls covered in Academy history, through velvet doors. As they neared their seats, Luna whispered, "I don't think I belong here." Keanu looked at her, then looked at the crowd gathering below the stage. "Maybe," he said. "Maybe they just forgot someone like you could exist." Luna blinked. The lights dimmed. The show was about to begin. But for Luna, the show had already started. In the world, it had already begun watching her. Not because they understood her. Not because they accepted her. But because in a sea of polished glass, she was the only one not pretending to be a reflection. The lights inside the Dolby Theater glittered like a galaxy manufactured for cameras. Chandeliers hung above rows of perfect smiles and diamonds borrowed for the night. Every corner gleamed. Every angle was designed for spectacle, but Luna felt like a ghost floating through someone else's dream. The red carpet was behind her, but the sting of it still pulsed in her soles. Her feet were already raw, not from the ground, but from the stairs. She walked behind Keanu in silence, clutching her notebook to her chest like armor. The strap of her dress kept slipping off her shoulder, and every time she reached to fix it, she felt hundreds of eyes crawling up her arm. The whispers followed them into the seats. "Who is that girl? Publicity stunt, maybe. God, did he find her on the street? Is this some weird indie art thing?" A woman in the third row didn't even bother whispering. Poor thing. If you can see the dirt in her cuticles. Luna's face flushed. She dropped her hands into her lap and stared at the gold-plated program on her seat, pretending to read. The words blurred. Best documentary feature, best international short known of it meant anything. It might as well have been in another language. Keanu sat beside her, calm hands resting on his knees. She could feel the tension in his jaw, though. He didn't say a word. A man 2 rows down turned around and gave her a patronizing smile. "Everything okay, sweetheart? Do you know where you are?" She wanted to vanish. Fold into her seat. Become part of the upholstery. Every cell in her body screamed to run, but her notebook sat in her lap. Heavy, and Keanu hadn't moved. That's what scared her the most. That he stayed. That he hadn't made a mistake. That he'd chosen her on purpose. The ceremony began. A host made a joke about celebrity activism. The room laughed. Luna didn't. She sat through 4 awards before whispering, "They hate me." Keanu leaned in, not with pity, not with correction, but with truth. "No, they don't understand you. And people fear what they don't understand." She clenched her fists, her voice a whisper just above the music playing between segments. "Why?" "Me." His answer was quiet. "Because you've survived things they couldn't." Her throat tightened. No one had ever said that to her, not in that way. Not like it was a strength. Not like it was something worth bringing to the Oscars. The cameras panned past them. She could see herself on the giant screens overhead for a second. Her face looked too real for this room. Too unfiltered. Too human. She felt like a crack in a glass Floran welcome, but impossible to ignore. Then the spotlight dimmed, and her name flashed across the screen. She froze. She hadn't been told this. A pre-recorded segment began playing. A voiceover spoke gently. "We often celebrate performances, but sometimes the most powerful story is survival."
Hey, this is Luna.
A photo appeared taken from behind of her sitting outside the bakery. Scribbling into her old notebook with her knees pulled to her chest. Gasps echoed dot, and then a silence unlike anything that had come before. Not pity, not judgment, not applause, just stillness, raw, honest. Every eye turned to her. Luna's breathing hitched. She wanted to scream, to run, to vanish. Instead, she looked over at Keanu. He didn't say a word. He simply took her hand, not to protect her, but to stand with her. Luna looked back at the screen. The narrator continued. She said nothing for weeks. She had every reason not to, but sometimes silence is the loudest scream we have. The segment ended, and the theater remained quiet. No applause, no music, just one long pause then. One pair of hands began to clap. Not Keanu's, someone else young. It's an actress in the back row, standing, then another, then another. Not a standing ovation. Not yet, but the sound began to rise. Not for the speech. Not for the production, but for her. And still, she didn't stand. She stayed seated. Not because she was ashamed, but because standing would have made her seem like a symbol. And tonight, she didn't want to be a message. She just wanted to be Luna, the girl with no shoes, a notebook in her lap, and the storm of every painful year behind her eyes. And somehow, for the first time, that was enough. The ceremony ended, but the chaos had only just begun. In the green room behind the stage, champagne glasses clinked, publicists barked into phones, and designers whispered frantically about brand tags. Nominees posed for last-minute photos, laughing too loudly and hugging too tightly. But none of it touched Luna. She sat in the far corner of the room on a velvet bench, her notebook still in her lap, her fingers shaking. Her lavender dress, once soft, now clung to her like a question she didn't know how to answer. The segment about her had gone viral within minutes. Phones buzzed, screens lit up with hashtags, hashtag WHOS Luna, hashtag barefoot girl, hashtag keenest guest. Some tweets were kind, some were cruel, most were confused. Who let this street girl into Hollywood's holiest night? Keanu's gone off the deep end? What's next? The Emmys with a cactus? She's a plant. Probably an actress with a tragic backstory to boost some campaign. The worst part wasn't the hate, it was the disbelief. As if her existence needed to be justified, scripted, explained. Someone handed her a glass of sparkling water. She took it without looking up. Keanu had stepped away for an interview. Camera still hunted him. Though his eyes kept drifting back to her across the room like he was watching a fire he refused to leave unattended. Tall man in a pressed navy tux passed by and muttered under his breath, "Your 15 minutes are almost up. Enjoy them." Luna said nothing. But inside, something cracked. It wasn't the insult. It wasn't the spotlight. It was the noise. She had spent most of her life in silence and sidewalks, in shelters, under bridges. Silence was her country, her currency, her shield. But now, all she could hear was the world talking about her, not to her. She stood up, her knees weak, her throat dry. She walked out of the green room and down the corridor, past makeup mirrors and racks of backup gowns, until she reached a small hallway where no one else wandered. A janitor passed her and nodded, not recognizing her. She nodded back. And then, in that quiet space, she slid to the floor, back against the wall, notebook clutched to her chest like a wound she didn't know how to bandage. Tears came, slow, not dramatic. Not pretty, the kind of crying that didn't need sound. That's when Jasmine Riley appeared. She was younger than Luna expected, maybe late 20s, in a rust-orange jumpsuit with scuffed sneakers and a press badge that looked bent from overuse. Not a celebrity, not a talk show host, independent podcaster, foster system survivor, activist, someone who knew what it meant to be discarded. "Luna?" Jasmine asked gently. Luna wiped her eyes, already bracing for more questions. But Jasmine didn't sit across from her. She sat beside her, quiet, present. "They want me to get a quote," Jasmine said after a minute. "But I don't want one. I just wanted to see how you're breathing." Luna laughed, one bitter, breathy sound. "Barely." Jasmine nodded. "Same." Another pause. Jasmine reached into her bag and pulled out a microphone, but didn't turn it on. "I'm supposed to ask you why you came tonight," she said, "but I want to ask something else." Luna looked at her. "Do you know why you came." The hallway buzzed faintly with the echoes of celebration on the other side of the building. Luna stared ahead. Then she spoke. Just one sentence. Not rehearsed, not planned. Raw. Because I couldn't remember the last time I was invited to anything. The hallway fell silent again. Jasmine didn't reply, didn't move, but her eyes filled instantly. And when she finally turned on the microphone, she didn't ask another question. She just let the silence record. Later that night, Jasmine posted that single line as a clip. No background music, no edits, no filters. Just Luna in her lavender dress, sitting barefoot in a hallway no one remembered. The internet didn't know what to do with it. The clip spread like wildfire, not because it was shocking, but because it was honest. Actors reposted it. Activists reposted it. Activists reposted it. And people whispered in comment sections, "I know exactly what she means. I haven't been invited to anything real in years. This broke me." Luna didn't watch the numbers climb. She didn't care. She was still sitting on that hallway floor, Jasmine beside her, when Keanu found her again. Crouched down, studied her face, and didn't ask if she was okay. He simply asked, "Ready to leave?" She stood slowly, nodding. But as they walked away, Jasmine called out gently, "Hey, Luna." She turned. "I didn't just walk a carpet tonight," Jasmine said. "You opened a door." Luna didn't know how to respond. So, she nodded, and walked barefoot back into the world, not as a symbol, not as a stunt, not as a guest, but as a voice, one the world had heard, and finally believed. The boutique was nothing like Luna expected. No mannequins and glass windows, no neon signs or security buzzers, no loud music playing trendy songs she didn't recognize. It sat on the corner of a side street in Silver Lake, tucked between a dusty record shop and a coffee bar with chalkboard menus. The window displayed only one thing, a single faded photo of a seamstress threading. A needle by candlelight. The car ride had been silent. Luna pressed her forehead to the window, watching water droplets race down the glass like they had somewhere better to be. Keanu didn't ask her questions, didn't stare, just drove like someone who knew how to keep silence company. When they stepped out of the car, she hesitated on the sidewalk. "What is this?" she asked. "A favor," he said simply. The door chimed softly when he pushed it open. The inside smelled like cedar wood and orange peel. A woman stood behind a wooden counter, middle-aged, tall, with silver streaks in her braids and rings on every finger. She looked at Luna not with surprise or pity but recognition, as if she already knew what kind of storm had shaped the girl standing before her. "This her?" the woman asked. Keanu nodded. "This is Luna." Luna flinched slightly, hearing her name aloud like it had just been dug up from under a stone. "I'm Camille," the woman said. "I don't sell dresses here. I give them reasons to exist." Luna didn't know what that meant. She was still trying to make sense of the heavy velvet curtain that separated the back of the shop from view. "Why am I here?" Luna asked. Her voice sounded smaller than she intended. Keanu knelt slightly to meet her eye level. "Because where I'm going tonight, you're going with me." Luna stiffened. "You mean like, to an event?" Keanu nodded. Double quotes, "like a public thing?" The Oscars her breath caught. "No." The word burst out before she could swallow it. "I can't. I don't belong there." He didn't argue, just gently asked, "Why not?" "Look at me," she snapped, suddenly angry. "I'm nothing. I'm nobody. They'll laugh. They'll film me. They'll destroy me." "They might," he said honestly. "But you'll still walk in beside me, and they'll see what I see." Camille watched silently from the shadows, like she'd seen 100 breakdowns in her fitting room before, and knew the right words didn't come from her. They had to come from the girl herself. After a long pause, Luna spoke again, quieter. "I don't want to look fake." Keanu nodded. "Then don't. Just look like you." Camille stepped forward and offered her hand. "Let's find something that feels like you're seen, not changed." Behind the curtain, the room was warm and dim. Old mirrors lined the walls, the kind that didn't lie about your shape. Racks held dresses of all kinds, lace, silk, denim. Even one made of recycled newspaper. Luna didn't touch anything at first. Her fingers hovered, uncertain. "Try this," Camille said, holding up a lavender slip dress. Simple, elegant, no sequins. No shine. Luna stared at it like it might bite her. She tried it on. The fabric hugged her awkwardly. She stared at herself in the mirror, her arms folded across her stomach. It didn't fit right, not physically, not emotionally. "You okay in there?" Camille asked through the curtain. "It doesn't look like me," Luna replied. "Then let's try again. 2 more dresses, then 3. Each one turned her reflection into someone she didn't recognize. Someone polished, someone not real. Finally, she stepped out barefoot in the lavender dress again, her hair damp. Her shoulders as Souched. Keanu was waiting near the front of the boutique. He turned around and froze. Not because she looked like a princess, but because she looked like Luna, raw, nervous, silent, radiant in her defiance of beauty. "Norm," she pulled at the hem awkwardly. "It doesn't fit," she said. "I mean, it fits, but it doesn't fit." He smiled. "It's not supposed to fit like armor. It's supposed to breathe like skin." She looked at him, confused. He stepped closer, pulled something from his jacket pocket, and held it out, a bracelet, worn leather, braided, clearly handmade. A single small charm on it, an open eye, scratched from wear. "This belonged to someone who once saved me," he said. "I want you to wear it. Not because it's fancy, because it reminds me that the world changes when someone chooses to see you." Her hands trembled as he fastened it around her wrist. Camille whispered from the corner, "I've seen women walk out of here in $10,000 gowns. None of them ever looked like they were ready to go to war." Luna exhaled. For the first time in years, she looked at herself and didn't feel invisible. She still didn't feel beautiful, but she felt real, and that was more dangerous. Morning came like an ambush. The sun through the guest house window was soft, golden, calm. But everything outside the glass was chaos. The world hadn't just noticed Luna, it had turned her into a battlefield. She lay in the borrowed bed beneath. Linen sheets that smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. Birds chirped. The world outside sounded peaceful. But her phone, a cheap prepaid Keanu, had slipped into her bag when she wasn't looking, buzzed. Non-stop on the nightstand. She hadn't touched it. She didn't want to. But she knew. She knew this wasn't the kind of story the world just absorbed with grace and wonder. It was the kind it ripped apart. Because honesty doesn't sell ad space, controversy does, still barefoot. She slid out of bed, wrapped the blanket around her shoulders, and turned on the television in the corner. The screen exploded. Barefoot Mystery Girl, Who is Luna? And why was she really at the Oscars? Sources claim Keanu's guest has a criminal pastoral name. Real story, unknown. Was the Oscars moment staged for political gain? Troubled teen or Hollywood plant? Luna's breath caught in her throat. Every network had a different theory. Photos from her darkest nights were dragged from the internet's gutters. Articles speculated about her time in shelters, a sealed juvenile record. Even a grainy photo of her sleeping on a church step from 2 years ago. No one asked her anything. They just told the world who she was, the lavender dress, the barefoot walk. The single sentence heard around the world, all of it twisted, dramatized, chewed, and spit out, and beneath it all rumors about Keanu, midlife crisis, adopted her out of guilt, publicity stunt for a new documentary. Worst part wasn't the lies, it was how fast they came. How easily the world moved from wonder to suspicion, like kindness had an expiration date. Like truth had to audition to be believed. A knock came at the door. Luna didn't answer. A second knock. Then, his voice quiet, tired. "Luna, it's me." She opened the door. Keanu stood there, holding 2 mugs of tea. Same flannel shirt as yesterday, his eyes shadowed. Not from lack of sleep, but from watching the world do what it always does, punish people who tell the truth, without makeup on. She didn't speak. She took the mug. They sat on the floor, in silence. The way they always did. Finally, she asked, "Did I ruin your life?" He didn't even blink. "No," he said. It reminded me what it was for. Luna looked away, tears rising. "They're saying horrible things," she whispered. "I know. They're calling me a fraud. They called me that once too," he said. "When I chose to step out of the box, They wanted to keep me in. When I turned down roles that didn't fit my soul, she looked up, eyes narrowing. What did you do? I stayed quiet and kept showing up. She exhaled, trembling. I don't know if I'm strong enough for that. He looked at her long and steady. You walked into a room last night barefoot. They wore armor. You didn't. She stood, walked to the window. Cars passed below. Drones hovered. The world was still watching. Her voice broke. What do I do now? He walked beside her. You write? She stared at him. In the notebook, he said. Finally, write your version. She opened the drawer, pulled it out. The old one water-damaged, tattered, blank. She opened to the first page. For the first time in 2 years. She picked up a pen. She wrote one sentence. I am not your headline. The next was easier, and the next, and then a full page, and then more. She didn't leave the guest house that day, or the next. She stayed and wrote, not for the world, but for revenge, but for clarity. To remember what really happened before the world decided to tell her story for her. But outside, something else was happening. The backlash had sparked another fire. Not from critics, but from people who'd felt. Like her messages flooded Jasmine Riley's inbox. From girls in shelters, boys who'd run from violence, young adults who'd never been invited anywhere either. They didn't want gossip. They wanted Luna's words, the truth. Unfiltered, Keanu gave her a choice. You don't owe them anything, he said. But you can answer if you want to. Shh. Stared at the notebook, then back at him. One interview, she said, but not with a network. He smiled, knowing exactly who she meant. Call Jasmine. Jasmine Riley's studio wasn't much of a studio. It was a converted laundry room in the back of her rented bungalow in Echo Park. Mismatched foam panels clung to the walls. The only camera was an old DSLR mounted on a shelf of used philosophy. Books and the mic cheap chipped. Faithful sat at the center of a table with water rings from too many late-night recordings. But tonight it was the center of the internet. Keanu sat just outside on the porch under a string of yellow bulbs, sipping tea in silence. He wouldn't appear on camera. Not because he wasn't invited. Luna had begged him to stay close, but because he knew. This wasn't his voice the world needed. This was hers. Inside, Luna sat across from Jasmine, barefoot as always, her lavender dress replaced by an oversized hoodie and leggings too short at the ankles. She didn't wear makeup. She didn't comb her hair. The only thing she brought was her notebook, filled now with uneven handwriting and tear-stained corners. Ready? Jasmine asked gently. Luna nodded. But I won't read from it, she said. I want to say it. Raw. The camera light blinked red. They were live. The chat exploded instantly. It's her. Barefoot Girl speaks. Here for Luna. Is this real? Jasmine leaned forward. Luna, she began softly, you've been silent for? A long time. What made you want to speak now? Luna inhaled deep. Because every time someone told my story, they left out the most important part. Jasmine nodded, which is, Luna stared at the mic, that I didn't survive by luck. I survived because I chose to. She paused, her voice steady. I chose not to disappear, even when it would have been easier. Comments flooded the screen. Goosebumps. She's not playing a role. This is real. Thank you for saying that. Jasmine gave her space. The way only someone who knew survival could. Luna continued. I slept in 20 different places before I turned 16. I've been kicked, ignored, kissed without asking, told I should smile more, told I should vanish. I've had people throw quarters at me like I was a wishing well. And then last week, someone asked me what designer I was wearing. The chat was silent for a beat. Then, damn, this world is wild. Say it louder. You want to know why I walked the Oscars barefoot? Luna asked. Jasmine leaned in. Tell us, because the ground doesn't lie to you. She looked directly into the camera. When you grow up with nothing, you learn to listen to the ground. It tells you if the street is safe, if someone's coming, if the night will be cold. And when I stepped onto that red carpet barefoot, I wanted to know if it was real or just another lie wrapped in velvet. Jasmine blinked back tears. So did thousands watching. Then Luna said what no one expected. "And I want to tell you something else," she said. A hush fell over the stream. "Keanu didn't save me." Gasps in the comments. Jasmine's eyebrows raised, but she didn't interrupt. "He saw me," Luna said. "And then he stayed. That's all. And that's everything. He didn't give me a mansion. He didn't buy my silence. He walked beside me. And when the world pointed its cameras, he stood back and let me speak." Jasmine whispered, "That's rare." Luna nodded. "But don't mistake me for a fairy tale." Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a torn envelope. The chat slowed, confused. She opened it. Inside, a single black and white photo. This, Luna said, holding it up, was taken 5 years ago. The camera zoomed in. The photo showed a younger Luna, thinner, bruised, holding a sign that read, "Invisible is not the same as gone in charcoal. I gave this to a volunteer during a charity drive. Never saw it again." She looked down at the photo. "Until someone leaked it this morning and said I faked it." Jasmine's face tightened. "Who leaked it?" she asked, though she already sensed the answer. Luna held up a nameplate one from last night's Oscars dinner table. It read, "Devin Hart, Humanitarian Director." True Reach Foundation. The audience erupted. Nitrogen went way. "Last year, he said she was a stunt. Expose him." Luna's voice didn't shake. "He kept it. Probably knew it would be valuable one day. Used my pain like a souvenir. And now he says I'm a liar." The camera stayed on her. "But here's what he doesn't understand." She leaned forward. "You can't fake pain. You can only survive it." The stream reached over 2 million viewers by that moment, and just before Jasmine wrapped, Luna said one final thing. "Don't make me a symbol. Just listen. And maybe next time invite the girl no one sees." When the stream ended, Jasmine sat, stunned. Outside, Keanu stood waiting, silent, proud. But as Luna walked out onto the porch, she didn't cry. She smiled just a little. And the first word she said to him? Not "thank you." Not "we did it just." "Ready?" He raised an eyebrow. "For what?" She looked at the sky, full of soft city light and wild possibility. To start telling other people's stories now. It was the kind of event Luna would have watched from the shadows if she'd been allowed into the building at all. But now, the conference center in San Francisco shimmered with polished marble. Floor-to-ceiling glass and lanyard-wearing media elites checking their reflections in mirrored walls. The banners read "Truth and Image, the Ethics of Visibility." And though the stage was filled with journalists, editors, network executives, and polished nonprofit spokespeople, no one was talking about them. They were talking about her. Not long ago, Luna was a statistic, a cautionary tale, footnote in someone else's data. Now she was the keynote speaker, invited not as a symbol, not as a rescue project, but as a storyteller. The only one who hadn't tried to sell her own story for applause, but the moment was already cracking before it began. Backstage, Jasmine Riley paced with her phone in hand. "We've got a problem," she whispered. Keanu, standing near the curtains with arms folded, looked up sharply. "What kind?"
Aspen.
Handed over the screen. A tweet, moments old, already going viral. Breaking. Luna allegedly staged her barefoot appearance for Femex councilwoman claims it was a planted PR stunt by Reeves' team. Under it, a blurry photo of a woman Luna once knew, Tamara Finch, the director of a youth shelter Luna had run from 2 years ago. "She's trying to rewrite it all," Jasmine muttered. "Says you rehearsed the Notebook moment with Keanu. That you had acting training, that you lied about being unhoused for attention." Keanu's jaw tightened. "And the press is already running with it?" "Some are waiting," Jasmine said. "But a few vultures already started circling. If she gets enough attention before Luna speaks, it could poison the whole room." On stage, the lights dimmed. KO moderator's voice echoed from behind the curtain. "And now, we welcome a voice that redefined how we see presence and pain. Please welcome Luna." Her name alone stirred a rumble through the hall. Some clapped, some crossed their arms, some just raised their phones, ready to record. Luna stepped into the spotlight, not in a gown, not in makeup, Just a clean gray hoodie, black jeans, and again bare feet. The audience quieted. She walked to the podium slowly, letting the silence settle like dust in sunlight. Her notebook, now filled front to back, sat in her hand. She didn't open it. She looked straight at the crowd. "Some of you already think I'm a fraud," she began. Not a single person moved. "Some of you believe a tweet you read 20 minutes ago matters more than what I've lived for 16 years. She didn't flinch. "So let's talk about why it's so easy to believe a lie. When the truth doesn't wear a suit," gasps echoed. A few phones lowered. "For a long time, I was invisible. I thought that was safer, because the world only seems to care about people after they're broken and branded. I didn't have a voice until someone famous stood next to me. I didn't have a name until people argued about whether it should matter." Her voice cracked, but she didn't stop. "But here's what you don't understand. If your first question is she real? Then you've already missed the point. Because there are thousands of girls like me, thousands of boys like me. None of them have stages. None of them have spotlights. They just have stories." A few journalists lowered their heads. "Yes, I walked the Oscars barefoot. Yes, I said one sentence. And no, I didn't write it for applause." She stepped around the podium now, walking barefoot across the polished stage. "I said it because it was the only thing I had left to give." She paused. The room was silent. And if you still think that moment was fake, then maybe you need to ask yourself why pain only feels real to you when it's sponsored by a network. A murmur rippled. In the shadows of the room, Jasmine pressed her hand to her mouth. "Keanu?" He smiled, barely, eyes glistening. Luna looked around the hall. "You can debate my story all day. But tonight, when you go home and shut off your phones, ask yourself one thing." She turned back to the audience, eyes burning. "When was the last time you invited someone invisible to the table?" The applause didn't come all at once. It came in waves, soft at first, hesitant, then louder, louder, standing. Ovation, not from pity, from impact. That night, the tweet died. Tamara Finch's smear campaign collapsed when former staff leaked. Audio of her bragging about using Luna's story to gain funding. It didn't matter anymore. The world had already seen through it, because truth, when spoken barefoot, was harder to erase. Within days, Luna's speech was picked up by schools, colleges, broadcast and media training seminars, played in newsrooms. It became more than a viral clip. It became curriculum. Luna, she didn't stay in the spotlight. She didn't take endorsement deals, didn't pose for magazine covers. Instead, she created something no one saw coming. A traveling stage, one that fit in the back of a van, painted with 4 words, stories without permission. Each week, she drove to a different town, parked in neighborhoods that never saw press vans, and handed out notebooks, empty, waiting. And when she spoke again, months later, it wasn't from behind a podium. It was on a folding chair, beside a girl in Fresno who'd just run from home, scribbling her first words in the dark. And Luna, now 17, barefoot on the gravel, whispered, "You're not a headline, you're a beginning." And the world finally began to listen, not to her, but to the ones still writing.